Imagine having roughly $48,000 in cash, just sitting in your bank account, completely ready to deploy.
Right, which is a great position to be in.
Exactly. And you want to use it to build your absolute dream business. We're talking a community kitchen and a forever home.
Yeah.
You have the business plan. You have this really eager audience waiting for it. You have the capital.
Mm-hmm.
But then you step off the plane and the government looks at your passport and says, we actually don't care how much money you have.
Yeah, put your wallet away.
Right. They say you are legally forbidden from owning the dirt you want to build this on.
It's the ultimate reality check, honestly. I mean, it completely shatters that comforting illusion we all have about money.
Oh, totally.
We tend to think that capital is just this, universal key that opens any door anywhere in the world. But sovereignty, and especially constitutional law, they do not bend to foreign capital, no matter how noble your intentions are.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are unpacking what I think is just the ultimate cross-border puzzle.
It really is a fascinating case study.
It's a highly specific, totally wild scenario from our sources. We have a U.S.-based resident currently living in North Carolina.
Okay.
And he wants to help his partner, Christine, build this forever home and a community cooking business all the way over in the Philippines.
Right.
And the financial target they're trying to hit is incredibly precise. It's roughly $48,000.
Which, when you look at the landscape of global venture capital or massive multinational expansions,
Yeah.
it sounds like a relatively modest sum, right?
It doesn't sound like a corporate takeover.
Exactly. But the mechanics required to actually move, protect, and legally structure that exact $48,000 across two completely different, entirely sovereign legal and financial systems. That is where this becomes an absolute masterclass.
It really does. Because the mission of this deep dive isn't just to tell, like, a nice human interest story about sending money overseas through a remittance app.
No, not at all.
We are exploring the high-level architecture of cross-border finance. We are going to look at how you synthesize United States tax law, the incredibly strict land rights embedded in the Philippine Constitution.
Which is a huge hurdle.
Oh, massive. Plus international crowdfunding mechanisms and these beautifully complex hybrid business structures.
And I want to speak directly to you, the listener, right now, because you might be sitting there thinking, well, I live in Ohio and I'm not trying to build a cooking business in Southeast Asia, so how does this apply to me?
Right, why should they care?
The reality is, the principles we are extracting from this blueprint today, strategies like hacking fiscal sponsorships, designing hybrid nonprofit and for-profit models, tapping into international donor networks.
Yeah.
These are the exact same tools used by massive global NGOs and billion-dollar tech startups.
Wow, okay.
If you are ever considering any kind of global entrepreneurial venture, a philanthropic project, or even just, hiring an international team, the frameworks we are going to explore today are universally applicable.
So the geography might be highly specific to the Philippines, but the playbook is universal.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's lay out the immediate financial math just to set the stage for you. The blueprint from our sources allocates a target of 2.6 million Philippine pesos, specifically for the physical house.
Right.
At the exchange rate we're working with today, which sits roughly around 0.0125 US dollars to the peso.
Yeah.
That translates to about 43,000 US dollars.
And that chunk of capital, that 43 grand, strictly secures the physical property, the concrete, the roof, the walls.
Just the building itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Then there is an additional 5,000 US dollars needed for what we can call startup and remodeling costs.
Okay.
This is the capital that actually turns a house into an enterprise.
Yeah.
It covers the commercial kitchen gear like the heavy-duty ovens, the stainless steel prep tables.
Oh, the fun stuff.
Yeah. Plus the labyrinth of local municipal permits and the initial marketing budget to just get the word out.
So 43,000 for the house, 5,000 for the business startup.
Total 48,000 US dollars. On paper, it sounds so incredibly simple.
But as we are about to discover, international jurisprudence makes it anything but simple.
Oh boy.
Because right out of the gate, before a single dollar even crosses the ocean, we hit a massive, seemingly impenetrable constitutional wall.
Okay, let's talk about that wall.
Huh.
Because this is the first major roadblock in the entire endeavor, and it fundamentally alters the entire strategy.
It really does.
The boyfriend, sitting in North Carolina with his U.S. financial tools, cannot simply wire the money, fly over, and buy a plot of land for Christine.
No.
He legally cannot do it.
Not even a little bit. If you examine the 1987 Philippine Constitution, specifically Article 12, Section 7, the legal text is unequivocally clear.
There's no gray area.
None. It is the absolute law of the land, and it states that foreigners cannot own land in the Philippines, period.
Wow.
It is a strict protection of national patrimony. The physical land belongs to Filipino citizens.
And what struck me when looking into the sources on this is the total lack of loopholes for the individual.
Right.
There are absolutely no exceptions for the type of visa you hold. You could be a tourist. You could have a work permit. It literally doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all.
There are no exceptions for the amount of money you are investing either. You could show up with $48,000 or $48 million, and Article 12, Section 7 just does not care.
Precisely. You cannot buy your way out of a constitutional mandate.
So let's pause here. What happens if he just ignores the corporate structuring we are about to discuss?
Oh, that's dangerous.
Like, what if he just wires the $48,000 directly into Christine's personal bank account in the Philippines and says, here, buy the land in your name, we're building our dream together?
That is the most common mistake foreign investors and partners make, and it is a catastrophic financial risk.
Really?
Catastrophic.
Yes, because if he does that, he has just made an unprotected $48,000 legal gift.
Oh, from a legal standpoint, he has zero claim to that property. If the business fails, or, more personally, if they break up and the relationship ends.
Which happens.
Exactly.
Right.
He has absolutely no legal recourse to recoup his capital. He cannot force the sale of a property he doesn't legally own. He would just have to walk away empty-handed.
Which is terrifying. I was trying to visualize this, and I came up with an analogy based on the source material.
Let's hear it.
It is like saving up for years to buy a high-end vintage sports car. You finally have the cash, you negotiate the deal, but the federal law states you are only legally allowed to lease the tires.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Right. You can own the heavy machinery, you can own the leather seats and the engine, but you have absolutely no legal ownership over the ground it touches. You do not control the footprint.
That is a fantastic analogy. You own the machine, but you don't own the road beneath it.
Exactly.
But as with all complex legal systems, while the front door is heavily padlocked by the Constitution, the legal architecture provides a highly structured, perfectly legal side door.
Okay, good.
This is where we get into the how and why of cross-border asset protection.
So if I am this guy in North Carolina, how do I protect my $48,000 investment if I can't own the dirt it sits on?
The established playbook from our sources details a two-pronged approach. First, we need to separate the land from the improvements on the land.
What does that mean, improvements?
Well, while he cannot own the soil, Philippine law dictates that he can legally own the physical structures built on top of it. He can own the house itself.
Oh.
Yeah. He can own commercial kitchen building, the equipment, all the physical assets.
But the building has to sit somewhere. It can't just float.
Right. So to secure the land beneath those structures, he utilizes a specific piece of legislation called the Investors' Lease Act.
The Investors' Lease Act.
Got it. This is a mechanism designed to encourage foreign direct investment without violating the Constitution. It allows a foreign investor or a foreign-owned entity to secure a long-term lease on private land for up to 50 years.
Okay, 50 years is a long time.
And that lease is renewable once for an additional 25 years.
Wow. So he is effectively locking down the ground for 75 years.
Exactly. For all practical business purposes, a 75-year lease provides the generational security of time. You can build a permanent structure on a 75-year timeline with complete confidence.
Yeah. I mean, you'll probably be dead by the time it expires.
Right.
But what about the corporate side? Because eventually, maybe they don't want to just lease the land. Maybe they want the enterprise itself to actually hold the title to the land, rather than just having Christine hold it as an individual.
That is the ultimate goal for asset protection. If they want the actual business entity to hold the land title, they have to form a specific type of Philippine domestic corporation.
Okay.
But here is the constitutional catch resurfacing. To legally hold a land title, that corporation must be at least 60% Filipino-owned.
Okay, wait. Here is where my internal alarms go off.
I know, it sounds scary.
If I am you, the listener, and I am putting up the entire $48,000 capital stack from my U.S. bank accounts, and you are telling me I have to hand over 60% of the company ownership to local partners.
Yes.
Doesn't he completely lose control of his own money? He's taking a minority 40% stake on paper. That sounds like he is just giving away the majority of his company.
It sounds incredibly dangerous on the surface. I completely agree.
Right.
But this brings up a crucial distinction in corporate law: the difference between equity ownership and operational control.
Oh, interesting.
The legal blueprint provides a very elegant resolution to this exact fear. Yes, to satisfy the constitutional mandate, he must take a 40% minority equity stake on paper.
Just to check that legal box.
Exactly.
Yep.
But corporate power isn't solely dictated by how many shares you hold. It is dictated by what the company's rule book says.
In the corporate bylaws.
Exactly. It's like owning 40% of the shares in a cargo ship.
Oh.
The Filipino majority might technically own the hull of the ship, but you can draft a legal contract that makes you the only person legally allowed to hold the key to the steering wheel. You dictate the destination.
Wait, how does that actually work in practice? How do you write that rule book?
You hire a local Philippine corporate lawyer. The source documentation notes this typically costs around $500.
Which is pretty reasonable for protecting 48 grand.
Incredibly reasonable. That lawyer drafts custom corporate bylaws that grant the minority foreign shareholder, the boyfriend, complete operational control.
So he gets the steering wheel.
Yes. You can structure the board of directors so that his 40% voting bloc has veto power over any major financial decisions, any sale of assets, or any taking on of debt.
Wow.
You completely decouple the 60% equity requirement from actual executive decision-making power.
So for a $500 legal fee, he essentially bypasses the operational risks of a constitutional restriction.
Exactly.
He establishes a legal fortress around his initial capital.
It is an incredible piece of legal leverage.
So to summarize the legal destination for you, the listener, he's a 40% owner of a Philippine corporation that holds the land title. His custom $500 bylaws give him the steering wheel.
Yeah.
And the corporation is fully compliant with Article 12, Section 7.
Perfect summary.
The destination is completely secure. But now we have a completely different problem. We have to reverse engineer the journey.
Right.
How do we actually fuel this vehicle? Where does the $48,000 actually come from?
And this is the critical pivot in the deep dive, because knowing how to protect the money is completely useless if you don't know how to raise it.
Exactly. And my immediate instinct, and probably the instinct of anyone who follows internet culture, is Christine has a massive TikTok following, right?
Yeah, huge audience.
People love her cooking videos. Why not just throw up a GoFundMe campaign, drop the link in her TikTok bio, and ask the fans to chip in?
And that is a perfectly valid starting point. GoFundMe is an excellent tool for personal, story-driven grassroots campaigns.
People are used to it.
Exactly. It carries high trust signals for everyday consumers. Plus, because the boyfriend is a U.S. resident, he can act as the U.S. organizer.
That makes it easier.
Much easier. He can tie the GoFundMe directly to his U.S. bank account for seamless withdrawals, which avoids a lot of international wire friction.
But when you really dig into the financial strategy and the sources, GoFundMe has a hard ceiling.
It does.
It is great for $5 or $20 donations from everyday fans. But if you want to attract serious capital, if you want someone to drop $5,000, or if you want a corporate sponsor to write a $10,000 check, a GoFundMe link isn't going to cut it.
It absolutely won't cut it, because it lacks the one thing high net worth individuals and corporate donors demand: tax efficiency.
Taxes. Always comes back to taxes.
Always. And this brings us to a strategy that leverages the absolute biggest advantage the boyfriend has in this entire scenario: his United States residency.
Okay.
It's a mechanism called fiscal sponsorship, and it is essentially hacking the philanthropy system.
I want to break this down so it makes complete sense, because when I read this in the source material, it blew my mind.
It's powerful stuff.
Let's look at a hypothetical scenario. Let's say an American donor, like a wealthy philanthropist or a mid-sized corporation, wants to give $10,000 to help Christine build this community kitchen in the Philippines.
Okay, great.
If they wire that $10,000 directly to her Philippine bank account, or even to her newly formed Philippine corporation, what happens on the U.S. side?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
They get a very polite thank you note from the Philippines, and that is the end of the transaction. Direct donations to foreign entities offer 0 U.S. tax deductions.
Ezo.
The Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, does not recognize the charitable status of a local cooking school in Southeast Asia.
Which immediately disqualifies you from receiving money from anyone who requires a tax write-off to justify their giving.
Exactly. You are leaving massive amounts of capital on the table.
Precisely. But by introducing a U.S.-based 501c3 fiscal sponsor into the middle of the transaction, You change the entire mathematical equation for the donor.
Okay, let's explain how this fiscal sponsorship actually functions. Think of it like renting a tax-exempt umbrella.
Renting an umbrella. I like that.
Right. The boyfriend doesn't have the time or money to build his own umbrella, meaning he doesn't want to spend 9 months and thousands of dollars applying for his own 501c3 nonprofit status with the IRS.
It's a nightmare of paperwork.
It really is. So instead, he finds an organization that already has one.
That is exactly the mechanism.
Yeah.
The American donor does not give the money to the Philippines. The American donor gives the $10,000 directly to the U.S. fiscal sponsor.
Okay.
Because that sponsor is a fully registered IRS-compliant 501c3 charity. The donor gets an immediate, highly lucrative tax deduction.
And how big of a deduction are we talking?
Depending on the donor's tax bracket, this deduction can be up to 60% of their adjusted gross income for cash donations.
That is a massive financial incentive. So the donor gets their tax break. The U.S. sponsor receives those funds into their tax-advantaged accounts. What happens next?
Well, the sponsor takes a small administrative fee, usually somewhere between 5 to 9%, to cover their overhead and legal liability.
Which is fair. They're doing the regulatory work.
Right. And then they legally disperse the remaining funds internationally to the project in the Philippines, as long as the Philippine project is framed correctly to align with charitable purposes.
And in this case, the strategy is to frame it strictly as community cooking education and poverty relief.
Exactly. Then the IRS is perfectly happy.
And the beauty of this is that the boyfriend acts merely as the project lead.
Yeah.
He doesn't file 990 tax returns. He doesn't deal with IRS audits. The fiscal sponsor handles 100% of the U.S. regulatory compliance.
They issue the tax receipts to the donors. They handle the annual reporting. He just manages the actual project on the ground.
It is an incredibly efficient use of existing infrastructure. And when we examine the landscape and the sources, there are specialized heavy hitters that do exactly this kind of international sponsorship.
Yeah, let's run through a few of them, because the specialization is key here. You don't just pick a random charity.
No, you have to align missions.
First, there's an organization called Global Impact. They are essentially the behemoth in this space. They are specifically built to handle international foreign work and rope grants overseas.
They are a very safe, highly established choice if you want institutional credibility.
Then you have fiscal sponsorship allies. They operate nationwide in the U.S., but they have a specific mandate to support international social enterprises.
Which fits the hybrid business model we will discuss later perfectly.
Exactly. But the one that really caught my eye is called A Well-Fed World.
Oh, that is the perfect thematic match. A well-fed world is exclusively focused on food security, nutrition, and food-based entrepreneurship.
Right. And why does that matter so much? Because if you approach a generic fiscal sponsor and say, hey, I want to build a cooking studio for my girlfriend's TikTok channel, they might reject you.
Because it sounds like a commercial vanity project.
Exactly. But if you approach a well-fed world and say, we are building a community kitchen that provides vocational culinary training and addresses local food insecurity, you are speaking their exact language.
That's brilliant framing.
When your project aligns perfectly with the fiscal sponsor's core mission, the compliance, the approval process, and the ongoing reporting become infinitely smoother.
Makes total sense. And the financial architecture doesn't stop at just renting a sponsor. There is another layer to this mentioning in the sources called DEFs, or donor-advised funds.
Right, I saw that. Organizations like Charities Aid Foundation America or the International Community Foundation specialize in these. But how does a DAF differ from the fiscal sponsor umbrella we just talked about?
Think of a donor-advised fund as a specialized philanthropic bank account. A fiscal sponsor actively takes your project under its wing and manages the inflow from various donors. A DEF is more personal.
How so?
Well, the boyfriend could literally open a DEF, put his own personal capital into it, and get the immediate U.S. tax deduction for himself right now.
Wait, really? For his own money?
Yes. Then, over the next few years, he acts as the advisor to that fund, instructing it to disperse grants internationally to the Philippine project.
Oh.
It allows him to decouple the timing of his tax benefits from the actual deployment of the capital.
That is financial engineering at its absolute finest.
It really is.
So let's look at the board so far. We have the legal structure in the Philippines, the 60/40 corporation, ready to catch the money safely.
Check.
We have the 501c3 tax-deductible pipeline built in the U.S. to funnel the money cleanly.
Check.
Now, we have to actually fill that pipeline. We still need to raise the $48,000.
Which brings us to the immense, often underutilized power of diaspora giving and institutional grants.
Let's start with the diaspora. If you aren't familiar with the history or the scale of this, the U.S. Filipino remittance corridor is one of the largest economic engines in the world.
It's staggering.
Filipino Americans send billions, with a B, billions of dollars back to the Philippines every single year.
It is a massive flow of capital, but historically, a lot of that is person to person.
Right, like sending money to family.
Exactly. It's someone wiring a few $100s to their cousin via Western Union to help with rent or medical bills.
Yeah.
What the financial blueprint reveals is that there are now highly structured institutional channels designed to aggregate this diaspora wealth and direct it toward sustainable livelihood projects. Projects exactly like Christine's community kitchen.
You aren't just asking people to send cash, you're asking them to invest in a community asset.
Exactly.
And there are specific vehicles built for this. One of them highlighted in the sources is the Bayanihan Foundation Worldwide.
Oh, yeah.
This is a U.S.-based organization entirely run by Filipinos abroad. What's incredible about them is their efficiency. They operate incredibly lean, ensuring that 97% of the donations they collect go straight to the actual programs on the ground.
And if the boyfriend frames the cooking business not just as a restaurant, but as a long-term sustainability and livelihood project, it fits the Bayanihan Foundation's mandate perfectly.
Then there is something called the Philippine Philanthropic Fund, or the PPF. The pedigree behind this organization is wild.
Really impressive.
It's actually a donor-advised fund created through a partnership between the Aspen Institute, CF America, and the Philippine government's Commission on Filipinos Overseas.
Wow. So it has serious backing.
Huge backing. It was literally engineered from the ground up to allow the diaspora to make tax-deductible grants to Philippine social enterprises.
But the mechanism that is arguably the most fascinating in this section is the CFO Link-A-Pil program.
Okay, Link-A-Pil. Let's dig into that.
Link-A-Pil stands for Lingkod sa Kapwa Pilipino, which roughly translates to service to fellow Filipinos.
How does Link-A-Pil function differently from a standard fund?
It is a government-adjacent matching and facilitation program. It's not just a donation portal.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say the boyfriend decides it's cheaper to source high-end commercial ovens and stand mixers from restaurant supply liquidators in North Carolina.
Sure, buy them cheap in the U.S.
If he tries to ship those to the Philippines himself, he is going to get hit with massive import duties and customs taxes at the border.
Right, customs will crush him.
Exactly. But if he routes those fiscal goods through the Link-A-Pil program, because it is a registered philanthropic initiative, they can facilitate the duty-free entry of those goods.
Wait, really?
Duty-free?
Yes. An overseas donor can specifically earmark physical materials or cash to go directly to a designated project, completely bypassing the standard friction of international customs.
That is unbelievable. It's like a fast pass for shipping.
Pretty much.
So that is the diaspora capital and the logistics of moving physical assets. But what about purely institutional money? Grant writing. The grant landscape is robust, provided you have that 501c3 pipeline we built earlier. A prime example is the U.S. Embassy Academy for Women Entrepreneurs, or the AWE program.
I looked at the AWE program in the sources, specifically their upcoming FY 2025 cohort in the Philippines. And my initial thought was, great, they'll just write Christine a check.
Right, that's what everyone assumes.
But that's not really how it works, is it?
No, it is much more strategic than a simple cash handout. AWE is a State Department initiative focused on hybrid training and networking for women launching businesses.
This is more about connections.
Exactly. The real value here is social capital. By securing a spot for Christine in that cohort, she gains immediate access to an alumni network of active funders, seasoned mentors, and potential corporate partnerships.
Ah, I see.
It takes a local TikTok creator and instantly legitimizes her enterprise on a global institutional scale.
But if they're looking for an organization to just write a heavy check, there is the Light a Single Candle Foundation, or LASC.
Yes.
But there is a very specific lock on their vault, right?
There is. The LASC Foundation provides international grants specifically for poverty relief and food security, which, again, fits the community kitchen model flawlessly.
Right.
But they are an invitation-only foundation, and their bylaws state they will only issue grants to U.S.-based 501c3 organizations. They will not send money directly to a foreign entity.
And here's where the puzzle pieces perfectly snap together.
Exactly.
Because the boyfriend just went through the trouble of renting a 501c status via a fiscal sponsor, like a well-fed world. He holds the exact key needed to unlock that institutional grant vault.
He does.
He is eligible to apply for international grant money that Christine, sitting in the Philippines, could never apply for on her own.
The fiscal sponsor acts as the institutional bridge, but there is one more source of capital mentioned in the blueprint that is so highly localized to the boyfriend's specific situation, it almost feels like a cheat code.
Yes, the North Carolina connection.
It's so funny.
The boyfriend lives in NC, and you would think the state government of North Carolina could not care less about a kitchen in Southeast Asia.
Why would they?
But they actually have state-level funding that he can access. It's called the NC STEP program.
The State Trade Expansion Program, administered via the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina.
Let's break this down because the logic here is fascinating. How does a North Carolina state export program fund a cooking business in the Philippines? We aren't shipping North Carolina sweet potatoes to Manila.
No, we're not. It is all about how you define an export in the modern digital economy.
Okay, explain that.
The NC STEP program is designed to reimburse costs for small businesses that are trying to reach international markets.
Okay.
If the boyfriend sets up a U.S. entity, or even just uses his sole proprietorship in North Carolina to manage the digital marketing, the e-commerce infrastructure, or the production editing of the cooking content that drives Christine's global TikTok audience. The state of North Carolina views those activities as export-related costs. He is exporting digital media and marketing services.
Wait. So you are telling me the state of North Carolina could legally reimburse the marketing and software costs of the TikTok channel because it is considered an international export?
Exactly. It subsidizes the digital infrastructure of the business.
That is why
And furthermore, there is the Carolina Small Business Development Fund, which offers microloans and bridge financing specifically for NC-based entrepreneurs.
So he can use that too.
Yes, he can use that as personal, low-interest bridge funding on the U.S. side to pay for immediate expenses while he is waiting for the larger international grants or the GoFundMe capital to actually clear the banking system.
Wow. So if I'm summarizing this entire capital raising strategy for you, the listener,
Yeah.
This is why this deep dive is a masterclass in financial engineering.
It really is a masterpiece of planning.
You aren't just going on TikTok, holding out a digital hat and begging for change. You are building a sophisticated, multi-pronged capital stack.
Very stable one.
You have North Carolina state business loans, bridging the immediate cash flow gaps. You have the Filipino diaspora philanthropic funds pouring into the physical foundation of the project. And you have institutional international food security grants flowing seamlessly through your rented 501c3 pipeline.
It is brilliant, robust architecture. But now we arrive at a critical inflection point in the narrative.
Okay, what happens now?
The $48,000 is raised. It is sitting in the accounts, it's crossing the ocean, the land is leased, the entity is formed. Now, what kind of business is Christine actually running inside that $43,000 house?
Right, because you can't just open the doors, start selling plates of food and say it's a business.
No, the government will definitely have a problem with that.
The legal structure you choose dictates your tax rate, your ability to take a salary, and your ability to bring on investors.
Very true.
And when you look at the landscape and the sources, there are two distinct, almost aggressively opposed paths you can take before we get to what I consider the master third option.
Let's start by exploring Path 1 in detail. The pure nonprofit. This is the purely mission-driven route.
So if my instinct is to use Path 1, do I just declare it a charity, put a donation jar on the counter, and start cooking for the neighborhood?
Not quite. The Philippine government requires a very strict registration process to ensure you aren't just running a tax-evading restaurant.
Makes sense.
First, you have to register the entity as a non-stock, non-profit corporation. You do this via the SEC in the Philippines.
And we should clarify for our U.S. listeners, this isn't the Securities and Exchange Commission that regulates Wall Street.
Right, good point. In the Philippines, the SEC is the government agency responsible for the registration and supervision of all corporate entities. You use their eSpark online system to file the paperwork. Under this classification, the entire storefront, the cooking school, the physical kitchen, it is legally classified strictly as a community education and food access center.
So it's legally a charity.
Yes. All the donations you receive fund the house and the operations, and any minor income generated from selling a plate of food goes directly back into the mission.
But just registering with the SEC doesn't make donations tax deductible for people inside the Philippines, does it?
No, and that is a crucial step. To incentivize local businesses or wealthy Filipinos to donate, you have to apply for PCNC accreditation,
Which stands for?
the Philippine Council for NGO Certification. It is a rigorous audit of your operations.
Okay, and if you pass?
If you pass, the BIR, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, which is the Philippine equivalent of the IRS, grants your organization done institution status.
And what does done institution status actually unlock for them?
It means local Philippine donors can get tax deductions for giving you money, up to 10% of taxable income for individuals and 5% for corporations.
That's a nice perk for local fundraising.
Crucially, it also exempts the donors from having to pay the donors tax, which is a massive hurdle in Philippine philanthropy.
Okay, that sounds incredible. It's a pure state-recognized charity. They can use specialized local funding platforms mentioned in the sources like initiate.ph, charityphilippines.org, or Global Giving.
Which are perfectly tailored for global TikTok fans who just want to donate to a wholesome home and community cooking foundation.
Right, but this is the real world. What is the catch with Path 1?
The catch is a very strict regulation known as the 30% max admin spend rule.
The 30% rule.
To maintain that highly coveted tax-deductible done status, the Philippine law strictly dictates that no more than 30% of your total funds can be spent on administrative overhead.
Let's contextualize that because that sounds tricky. What counts as administrative overhead versus programmatic spend?
It can get very muddy.
Like if the commercial refrigerator breaks down and they have to spend $1,000 to fix it, is that admin or program? Or if they buy a new high-end camera to shoot the TikTok videos that raise the donations, is that an administrative marketing cost or is it programmatic because it's part of the cooking education?
Those are the exact gray areas that require a meticulous accountant.
I can imagine.
Generally, the vast majority of your capital, 70% minimum, must go directly to the outward-facing mission. Buying raw ingredients, teaching the actual classes, giving away the physical meals.
And if you fail,
if you breach that 30% admin threshold, you lose your tax status and the donor money dries up instantly.
and there is an even bigger, more personal catch with Path 1 that I noticed. No equity distribution.
Precisely. Nobody gets rich off Path 1.
Wow.
Every single peso of profit generated must be reinvested into the foundation. Christine and her partner can take a reasonable salary as employees of the nonprofit, but they do not own an appreciating, dividend-paying asset.
So even if it takes off,
If the brand explodes and is suddenly worth millions, they cannot sell shares. Their personal wealth is capped.
which brings us to the polar opposite approach. Path 2, the for-profit model driven by venture capital and angel investors.
Let's unpack the mechanics of Path 2. Instead of a nonprofit, they register the business as an OPC, a one-person corporation.
Okay, an OPC.
This is a relatively new, highly efficient corporate structure in the Philippines that allows a single individual, like Christine or the boyfriend, to have solo control without needing a full board of directors.
That's convenient.
Alternatively, they can set up a standard stock corporation. Under this model, the entity owns the house and the storefront as hard commercial business assets.
And the funding mechanism flips entirely. Instead of asking fans for charitable donations, you are selling equity.
You're selling a piece of the pie.
You are pitching to investors. You are saying, give me capital, and I will give you a percentage of my future profits.
Right. And the pitch for a hyper-efficient digital-first food business is incredibly compelling to investors.
I love the specific math on this from the sources. When you look at the standard expectations for a food business in the Philippines, investors are looking for a 3 to 4 year payback period via dividends.
Which is pretty standard.
And the projected return is a 15 to 30% annual ROI once the business is fully scaled.
And why is that projected ROI so high? Because the traditional overhead is completely slashed.
How so?
The marketing is entirely driven by Christine's existing TikTok virality. You aren't paying thousands of dollars a month for billboard space or radio ads.
Right.
You are leveraging organic digital reach.
The customer acquisition cost is basically zero.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating is the existing ecosystem available to fund this exact type of venture. There are highly active equity platforms looking for these deals.
Oh, yeah, lots of them.
You have MainPH, the Manila Angel Investors Network, which specifically targets food and social enterprise startups. You have the Angel Investment Network Philippines.
And if you want to go regional, you have Banzia out of Singapore, which routinely does deals ranging from $100,000 to $1 million.
Wow.
And if they want to crowdsource the equity from their followers, essentially letting the fans buy a piece of the company, they can use platforms like Round One.
What's round one?
It is a fully SEC-licensed equity crowdfunding portal in the Philippines.
Mm,
In Path 2, you aren't asking for charity. You are offering slices of a highly profitable pie.
right.
You might offer a 5% equity stake to an angel investor for $10,000, which perfectly covers the remaining capital needs.
Okay, but this is where I have to step in and aggressively push back on this strategy because we are creating a massive clash of brand identities here.
I see where you're going with this.
Look at Path 1. Pure nonprofit. It's a beautiful story, it feeds the local community, but it means the founders can't build personal generational wealth from the massive profit margins of their own hard work. They are trapped by the 30% admin rule.
It severely limits their personal financial upside.
But then look at Path 2. Pure for-profit. Put yourself in the shoes of a loyal TikTok fan.
Okay.
You have been following Christine's journey for 2 years. You've watched her cook amazing meals in a tiny, cramped kitchen. You want to send $20 to help her build her dream home in a nice studio.
Sure.
If she suddenly pivots and says, actually, I'm a C Corp now, and your $20 is going to help generate a 30% ROI and dividend payouts for a Singaporean angel syndicate,
Oh.
you are going to feel betrayed. That alienates the very grassroots audience that made her famous. It feels corporate. It strips the soul out of the project. Isn't there an inherent fatal contradiction here?
You have hit on the exact tension that kills most creator-led businesses. It is an incredibly important question about balancing brand authenticity with financial reality.
So what's the fix?
And it leads us directly into the most sophisticated part of the blueprint, the combo play. This is Section 5. The master stroke, the hybrid social enterprise.
Yes. This is the elegant solution. How do we do both? How do we engineer a business that is ruthlessly profitable for the founders, but deeply authentically philanthropic for the community and the fans?
The hybrid model is an absolute masterclass in corporate structuring. The solution to the Path 1 versus Path 2 dilemma is you don't choose.
You do both.
You execute both paths simultaneously. You create a commercial food business that fundamentally structurally gives back.
Walk us through the step-by-step execution of this combo play, because the sequencing of how you set this up is everything.
Step 1. You launch the nonprofit arm first.
Okay, start with the charity.
Right. This is the entity that captures the pure tax-deductible donations from the TikTok fans and the grants from the U.S. fiscal sponsor.
Got it.
This nonprofit entity uses that capital to fund the building of the home foundation and to run the free community meals and the vocational cooking education. It is the authentic heart of the enterprise.
Okay, the philanthropic heart is beating, but where is the commercial wallet? How do they actually make money?
Under Philippine corporate law, a registered nonprofit is actually allowed to generate commercial income.
Oh, really?
Yes, provided that the income is deemed incidental and that the profits directly support the core mission.
I see.
So initially, you run the commercial cooking business, the catering, the paid meal prep, the branded merchandise underneath the nonprofit umbrella.
Under the same roof.
Exactly. The profits from selling those commercial goods pay for the free community meals. It is a closed, self-sustaining loop.
But what if the commercial side gets too big? What if the TikTok sales explode? They need to build a second factory, and they finally want to bring in those angel investors we talked about. You can't sell equity shares in a nonprofit.
Exactly. And that triggers phase 2 of the combo play.
Okay, phase 2.
Once the commercial side scales beyond incidental income, you spin it off. You incorporate a completely separate for-profit stock corporation.
So now there are 2 companies.
Now you have 2 distinct legal entities working in symbiosis. The for-profit corporation handles all the commercial food sales, generates the 20% net margins, and pays out dividends to the founders and the equity shareholders.
And how do you maintain the goodwill of the nonprofit? How do they stay linked?
The for-profit corporation signs a legally binding sponsorship agreement, or a revenue share agreement, with the nonprofit arm.
Like a contract.
Right. A fixed percentage of every single meal sold by the commercial arm is automatically routed to fund the charitable arm. It's the buy one, give one model, popularized by brands like Tato Mess Shoes.
That's so smart.
The investors get their ROI, the local community gets their free meals, and the global TikTok fans see a thriving, authentic social enterprise that is actually making a difference.
It is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But let's ground this high-level strategy in muddy reality for a second.
Okay, back to earth.
You don't just declare yourself a hybrid enterprise on the internet and start cooking. The bureaucratic hurdles to actually open the physical doors
Yeah.
in the Philippines are notoriously dense.
They are significant and they require immense patience.
Let's define the actual permits they need according to the sources. First, you need barangay clearance.
Right.
For our listeners outside the Philippines, a barangay is the smallest administrative division in the country. It's essentially your immediate neighborhood or village. You have to get approval from the local barangay captain before you can do anything.
They want to make sure you're a good neighbor.
Exactly. Then, once the neighborhood signs off, you escalate to the city level to get your mayor's permit and your general business license. But the biggest, most terrifying hurdle, especially for a food business, is the FDA LTO.
The license to operate from the Food and Drug Administration.
Right. And this is not just a rubber stamp where you pay a fee and walk away.
Oh, no.
To get an FDA license to operate as a food establishment, you have to prove to government inspectors that your kitchen meets rigorous commercial sanitary standards.
Which means physical inspections.
Yes. You can't just be cooking adobo in a residential kitchen with a pet dog running around.
No, you need commercial-grade ventilation, proper grease traps, specific sanitation protocols, and on top of the FDA, you have to navigate the BIR.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue. And this is where the hybrid model becomes an accounting nightmare if you aren't prepared.
Absolutely.
Because now you have two completely different tax profiles running parallel. The business income from the for-profit side is taxed at standard corporate rates, but the accredited donations flowing into the nonprofit side are tax-exempt.
You cannot commingle those funds.
It would be a disaster. Plus, you have mandatory employee benefits.
You have to set up SSS and PhilHealth.
Explain those real quick.
For our international listeners, think of SSS, the Social Security system, as the mandatory pension and social insurance program. And PhilHealth is the mandatory national health insurance program.
Right.
You cannot just pay your kitchen staff cash under the table if you want to be a fully compliant visa-sponsoring enterprise.
Which is exactly why the blueprint emphatically recommends hiring that local Philippine lawyer for $500 and retaining a local accountant.
It's non-negotiable.
You absolutely cannot navigate the intersection of the SEC, the BIR, the FDA, and local barangay politics from a laptop sitting in North Carolina.
Yeah.
It is impossible.
You need boots on the ground who speak the bureaucratic language.
Now, despite all that massive bureaucracy, the documentation outlines a fast start timeline that claims you can stand this entire structure up in 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
When I read that, it sounded aggressively, almost dangerously optimistic.
It is an incredibly aggressive timeline, but it is technically possible if you utilize parallel pathing.
Meaning doing things at the same time. Yeah.
You cannot do things sequentially. You have to do everything at once. Let's break down the stress test of this timeline.
Let's do it. Week 1.
Week 1. You go onto the SEC eSpark online portal and reserve the corporate names for both the nonprofit and the OPC.
Right.
At the exact same time, you hire that lawyer to draft the customized bylaws protecting the boyfriend's operational control.
Multitasking.
And while the lawyer is drafting, you are finalizing the business plan to submit to the U.S. fiscal sponsor.
Got it. What's week 2?
Week 2, SEC filing. You upload the final documents, pay the relatively low filing fees, and wait for the official registration to clear. Meanwhile, you're physically building the GoFundMe page and shooting the launch video.
Okay, so building the marketing while waiting on the government. Week 3.
Week 3, you go live. You launch the U.S. fiscal sponsor pipeline to capture the high net worth tax deductible dollars. You fire up the GoFundMe for the grassroots fans, and you launch the campaign to the TikTok audience with one unified, compelling narrative.
From viral TikTok to a real community kitchen help back Christine's dream.
Exactly. And simultaneously, if you need extra capital, you offer those equity slices to the angel networks. 10 grand for a 5% stake.
It's a breathtaking amount of work, but it shows how fast capital can move when the legal structure is perfectly calibrated.
Everything has to work in harmony.
Everything is working. The money is flowing through the 501c3. Christine is cooking in an FDA-approved kitchen. The 20% net margins from the for-profit arm are paying dividends and funding the community meals. But
Right.
we have one final glaring loose end.
The ultimate end game.
The physical reality of the cross-border entrepreneur. The structure is perfect, but the boyfriend is still sitting in his apartment in North Carolina.
Yep, thousands of miles away.
How does he actually get to live in the forever home he just spent months legally and financially engineering? He can't just fly over on a 30-day tourist visa and stay forever.
No, immigration will kick him out.
We have to look at the Philippine residency pathways. And this is where we encounter what I call the SIRV paradox.
The Special Investor Resident Visa. The SIRV is essentially the gold standard for foreign business owners in the Philippines.
It's the one everyone wants.
It grants indefinite residency, meaning he can live there forever, run his company, and come and go through the airport as he pleases. It is the ultimate goal.
But there's a massive mathematical problem. The guidelines explicitly state that to qualify for the SIRV, which has to be heavily vetted and endorsed by the Board of Investments.
The foreign national must prove they have invested a minimum of $75,000 directly into a Philippine business.
And if we look back at our initial calculations, our entire project target
Is exactly $48,000.
they are $27,000 short of the legal residency threshold. It's a paradox.
Yeah.
You engineer the perfect, lean, low-overhead startup.
You did everything right.
You utilize digital marketing, you kept equipment costs down, and because you were so financially efficient, you literally locked yourself out of a visa.
It is a fascinating catch-22. But how do you solve that discrepancy without just needlessly throwing $27,000 away?
Right. You don't just want to waste money to hit a quota.
It requires strategic long-term thinking. The analysis in the sources suggests a few viable solutions. The first is the concept of scaling up.
Explain how that works for the visa.
The $48,000 is just phase one. It gets the doors open.
Okay.
As the hybrid business generates commercial revenue, or as they secure more international grant funding through their 501c3 pipeline, they don't just sit on the cash. They reinvest that capital to expand operations.
Give me an example of an expansion.
Maybe they buy the adjacent empty lot. Maybe
Okay.
they build a larger commercial production facility for packaged goods.
Oh, I see.
They keep rolling the profits back into the company until his personal capitalized equity threshold hits that magic $75,000 mark. Then he applies for the SIRV.
So the business success eventually pays for the visa qualification. But what if they don't want to artificially inflate their capital needs just to satisfy a government quota? Are there simpler ways?
There are two alternative, much simpler residency pathways mentioned in the sources that bypass the investor requirements entirely.
What's the first one?
The most straightforward is the spousal visa, officially known as the 13A non-quota immigrant visa.
Assuming they get married.
Right. If the personal relationship is heading in that direction, legally marrying Christine completely bypasses the $75,000 threshold and grants him permanent residency based solely on his marriage to a Filipino citizen.
Well, that's romantic and highly efficient. And the other option?
The SRRV, the Special Resident Retirees Visa.
Wait, retiree. He might not be retirement age.
Don't let the word retiree fool you. You don't have to be 80 years old to get it. Depending on his age, specifically if he is over 50 and whether he has a verifiable pension, the required bank deposit for an SRRV is often drastically lower than the $75K SRE threshold.
Good to know.
It allows him to live there indefinitely and manage his investments.
So if we pull all the way back and synthesize this entire journey into the absolute optimal chronological roadmap, what does it look like? Let's give the listener the final blueprint.
Here is the step-by-step blueprint. Step 1. You launch the grassroots GoFundMe and simultaneously secure a U.S. fiscal sponsor to capture those heavy, tax-deductible American dollars.
Get the money flowing.
Step 2. You route those funds across the ocean as a formal equity investment into a newly formed Philippine one-person corporation, utilizing that $500 local lawyer to draft highly protective bylaws that grant you operational control.
Secure the control. Step 3.
Step 3. You launch the hybrid combo play, you set up the nonprofit arm to capture charitable donations and fund community meals, and you run the for-profit commercial arm to generate 20% margins through food sales, funneling a percentage back to the mission.
The ultimate business model.
Yeah.
And then step 4.
Finally, step 4. You apply for permanent residency, whether through scaling up to the SRV, utilizing the SRV, or acquiring a spousal visa, securing your physical place alongside the successful, fully compliant enterprise you just built.
It is a phenomenal roadmap. It really is.
It's brilliant.
And to summarize the ultimate value of this deep dive for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Yes, we spent the last hour dissecting a hyper-specific scenario. We talked about $48,000, a constitutional land ban in the Philippines, and leveraging TikTok fame.
Which is very niche.
Very niche, but the underlying mechanics we just unpacked. The flow of cross-border capital, the hacking of 501c3 fiscal sponsorships, securing operational control as a minority shareholder through bylaws, and designing hybrid corporate structures that balance profit with philanthropy. These are universally applicable tools.
Universally.
If you are building an agricultural app in Estonia, a sustainable coffee farm in Kenya, or a logistics startup in Mexico, these exact same frameworks apply.
Absolutely. Knowledge is most valuable when it is understood at a structural level and applied across different disciplines. The architecture is the same, even if the address changes.
Exactly. Now, before we sign off, we always like to leave you with something provocative to chew on, something to explore on your own. Throughout this entire structural masterpiece, we've relied on one massive underlying assumption.
And this raises a deeply complex question about the modern economy.
Yes, it does.
The entire financial viability of this physical, heavy, brick-and-mortar social enterprise, the 15 to 30% ROI, the 20% net margins, the ability to pay back investors in 3 years while funding free community meals, it relies almost entirely on the marketing engine of Christine's digital TikTok fame.
It is the ultimate magical low-overhead customer acquisition tool. It makes the math work.
Precisely. But what happens to a physical community foundation, to a concrete building with a 75-year lease, FDA commercial kitchen licenses, and a payroll full of employees relying on SSS benefits? What happens when the digital algorithm that funds it suddenly changes?
Wow, yeah. If TikTok gets banned or the algorithm shifts.
How does a social enterprise future-proof its heavy brick-and-mortar reality against the chaotic, completely unpredictable whims of a social media platform based in another country?
That is terrifying.
It is the ultimate tension between the physical and the digital, and it is a reality that every modern founder must eventually face.
Wow, what an incredible thought to end on. From figuring out how to lease the tires of a sports car to trying to outrun a digital algorithm, what a journey. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to look at your own projects, your own financial goals, and your own puzzles through this multi-layered cross-border lens. Until next time, keep diving.